When you're getting into racing, most drivers start off racing when they're little kids. They're in go-karts and then move from go-karts to the next level, to the next. For me, at the age that most people are go-karting, I was,
So welcome to the show, Jesse Iwuji.
yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So you got into racing whilst you were serving in the US Navy. What were the steps that you took to get from the Navy to NASCAR?
Yeah, so going from Navy to NASCAR definitely was a lot different than most drivers ever have to experience, right? When you're getting into racing, most drivers start off racing when they're little kids. They're in go-karts and then move from go-karts to the next level, to the next. For me, at the age that most people are go-karting, I was playing football in high school and middle school. And football was like my big thing. I wanted to go to college and play college football. I wanted to play at the highest level of college football that I could in the US. And I kind of set my goals and dreams on that. Even though I liked cars and I did like racing, I wasn't doing it because definitely didn't have the funding to do it. So football was my main thing. So eventually I got recruited to go play football at the Naval Academy. I got a full ride scholarship, so I was able to go play and not have to worry about paying for school or anything like that. But once I graduated from the Naval Academy in 2010, I became an officer of the Navy. As an officer, I was on the ships. So my first 4 years in the Navy, I went on two different deployments. Both of them over to the Arabian Gulf. I spent about 15 total months of my life out there. And then in between that, when I was coming back to San Diego, which was where I was stationed at, I was anytime I had some free time, I was taking my personal cars to tracks. And when I was doing these track days, that's when I really started building this passion for cars and racing. And then just one day, I was like, you know what? Like, I like doing track days. I think it's fun. I think it's cool. But like, what's stopping me from taking this to the highest level that I can? Like, why not try to become a pro driver? Like, it's if you look at the system of what it takes to get there, there is no one size fits all. It's everybody can find their own path, right? Some people start really early, some people start later. I mean, there's folks who have started racing when they're 30, 40 years old and done really well. So it all depends on kind of what you want to get to and where you want to get to. So for me, NASCAR was it. I'm in the U.S. It's the biggest motorsport in the U.S. and I wanted to go after it. And from there, I just kind of really took an entrepreneurship approach to it to figure out how to get the right funding, how to train myself, how to do different things, and by utilizing my resourcefulness, I was able to slowly make my way from being on a warship to on simulators at home, training myself to eventually lower levels of stock car racing and slowly working my way up.
Yeah, because you said in previous interviews that you were 25 when you set off to.
Yeah. I was, I think 20, my first race ever at wheel to wheel was in a late model stock car. And that was in 2015. So yeah, I was at that point, shoot, 20, about 27. I think I was 27, 27. 27 is when I did my first wheel to wheel race. But I started doing track days probably 2 years prior to that. So yeah, I was about 25 or so when I first started doing track days.
Yeah, because you said that in other interviews that you had to create businesses to go fund your racing. What were the
Yeah.
businesses that you fund or that you created to fund your racing?
So for me, I was on my second deployment, and during my second deployment, any free time that I had, I knew that when I came off the deployment, that I was really going to go hard towards trying to become a pro driver. So I had time on deployment to figure out and kind of plan, like, okay, how am I going to make this happen? And I started thinking, at first I was like, oh, maybe I'll just send out a bunch of emails and reach out to a bunch of companies, and somebody will sponsor me. Well, that's just not the case. Unfortunately, like when you're new to things and people don't know who you are, it's very difficult just to have someone throw money at you. So I figured, okay, if these companies aren't going to give me money, then I'll create the money myself. And how I was going to create it, but it was starting my own business. So the first business I actually started hosting drag racing events. So I would rent out a drag strip, and then I would do a lot of promo and hyping up the event online on social media, mainly Instagram and Facebook. And I would utilize that as a way to hype up people and get them to the event. And any money and profit I made off of ticket sales and other things at the event, merch sales and everything, I would use that as my, I guess my GoFundMe in a way to help myself get into racing. So the first event I did, had some decent profit, maybe like $3,000 or so, which helped me get my feet wet in racing. But then the next event, I think I profited like 27 grand. So yeah, it was a big jump, and that helped me pay for a lot. The next event after that was another a lot of money, and then after that, a lot of money. So and so on. So my first definitely the first few years in the business, it helped. I earned enough that helped me cover most of my costs in racing, not all of it, but most of it, and the rest of it, I found some sponsorship to help out. And then once it got to 2018, I was taking the step to the national level in NASCAR, where your NASCAR Truck Series, NASCAR Xfinity, it's a lot more expensive than the lower stuff. So at that point, the business wasn't making enough to pay for my racing, like maybe like a few, but not like all of them. So that's really when I had to put a big focus into my brand and growing my social media presence and all that stuff, so that I could eventually attract real sponsors, and we did. And since then, most of my racing has been paid for by sponsorship.
You were also quite dependent on networking, weren't you, for to get those big sponsors? Can you talk me through how that all came about with the networking?
Yeah, so networking definitely is big, right? So with me being from the Naval Academy Alumni Network, right? All the folks who have gone and got their education at the Naval Academy, graduated, a lot of them have gone off to do really big things in life. Post their military career, some of them have started their own businesses. Some of them are really big execs at big companies. A lot of them are doing really well, or just know a lot of people doing really well. And through that, it was a very big help for me. I've had a lot of great opportunities come my way over the last 15 years now, from Naval Academy alumni helping me, whether it was from their own companies they've worked with or worked with in the past, or just people they knew. They've made these great connections, and it's really, really helped me. So the Naval Academy alumni network is huge. It's big. It's strong. It's powerful, and there's a lot of great connections there. So networking is huge in this world we live in. You can know as much as you want, but at the end of the day, it's not about necessarily knowing everything. It's about knowing as many people as you can and being on their good side, so that when it's time for you to get some help, they're there for you to help you.
Yeah, you never know whose help you need later down the line, do you?
Yeah, exactly.
What was your first ever stock car race? If we're gonna just jump ahead a little, what do you remember your first race and what was it like?
Yeah, first race I ever did was in a late model stock car. So it was at Irwindale Speedway, and this was in April 2015. And that race was it was very nerve wracking. Like going into, I didn't know what to expect, how it was going to be. I was like, am I going to even blast out there with these guys? Like, because everybody who I was racing against had so much more experience than me. I mean, there was people I was racing against who've been racing late models for 10, 15 years, 20 years. People who have been racing longer than I've had a driver's license. So I was like, man, this is going to be tough. But I went in there. I think we had like 20 or 21 cars racing, I believe. Oh, yeah, about 21 cars, I think, or so, maybe more, racing that race. I ended up practice. I was 13th quick, which was good. And then I kept on trying to push it to be even faster, and I ended up spinning and then wrecking. Yeah, so it was a kind of a terrible start, but luckily the car wasn't that hurt. We were able to fix the damage, and I was still able to race. So when we went into qualifying, I kind of took it slow during qualifying. I qualified like 18th or something like that, so it wasn't really great. But once I knew that the car was fine in qualifying, okay, the car is fine. It's not like gonna, break on me. Going into the race, I went from 18th all the way back up to 13th again, and then I was running 13th, and then there was a guy that I was battling against, and I guess I was battling him too hard, and he got mad and he spun me out. And luckily, I didn't hit anything, but I fell back a little bit, so I ended up finishing like 15th or so in the race. But either way, it was still fun. Got through my first race, and I was like, you know what? I want to keep doing this. I want to keep growing and trying to make the most of it, and we did. It started in April 2015, and 10 years later, 10 years later from that actual, not weekend, but from that month, I ran Talladega just in April this year.
What have you learned from racing NASCAR for, well, just over 10 years? Because I have seen some of your moments, and I can't remember which race I watched yesterday, but I think it was one where you unfortunately went into a wall, which I know not the most glamorous one. But
Mhm.
what have you learned from racing stock cars for so long?
I've learned that it takes a lot of patience, for sure, focus. It takes a lot of understanding, like understanding the car and like what can be done to the car to help it be better for you to drive, right? The way cars are set up, not every setup matches every driver, right? Some drivers want setups to be a little bit have a little bit more oversteer or understeer or be more neutral. It just depends. So understanding kind of what the car is doing and then being able to verbalize that to your crew chief so that your crew chief can make the changes necessary so that the car is more comfortable for you to drive. Because the more comfortable you are driving a car, the faster you will eventually go. If you're uncomfortable driving it, then it's just hard to push it because you're like, I don't, it's unpredictable. I don't know if it's going to do the same thing every single lap. So I've definitely learned that a lot. And as you're driving and doing different things, you make mistakes, things happen. Sometimes you're in a car that's just not set up very well at all, and then you end up in a wreck too as well. That's happened to me multiple times where I'm trying to drive what I'm driving, but it's like not good, and then it just at some point it's just going to bite you. So yeah. So anyways, you learn a lot. So I've had my good days and I've had the terrible days too as well.
Yes, you were saying about the cars getting modified to the driver's specification. I forget who it was, but I think one of the racers, one of the previous races, I think it was one of the Napa drivers, he had his personal chair installed into the car. I was like, so racers are going to this length to optimize it. But then it makes sense in context because you want to win and you want the best conditions to win. Because you're against how many other races? 20?
More. When we're racing NASCAR Xfinity Series, we're 38 cars. Trucks, I think 36 if I'm not mistaken. Cup Series is 40. So there's a lot of cars on track. But yeah, when it comes to seats in these cars, there's a comfortability aspect to it, but there's also a safety aspect to it. You have to have a seat that's molded and fits to you because if it's too big, that means you're going to slide around in it. And when you're going that fast, and you're going to the corners with that much G-force, the more you're sliding around, the more your body is getting worn out. Because if you've ever, driven a car on the road and you've gone through a really sharp corner and you're having to brace yourself with your leg to kind of like hold yourself in place, imagine doing that in a race car for 2.5 hours with a lot more G forces. You don't want to do that. That's going to wear you out. I've been in cars before where the seat wasn't for me and it was a little too big. And at the end of the race, I mean, you were worn out. But if you have a seat that fits you well, then now your body isn't having to brace itself. You're not having to use your abs and your legs and your knees and all these things to hold yourself in position. You're just, the seat holds you there. You're good. So now you can concentrate on driving. It's not wearing you out. It's not bringing your core temperature up. It's just keeping you at a very level place so that you can focus on driving. So having the right seat is great for doing that. And also, too, is great for the safety aspect of it. The more you slide around, the more that if, let's say, you get in a wreck or something like that, you could get injured because now there's this little bit of space where your body's going to move at 100 plus miles per hour that far, into a seat. That's not good. Things can happen. So it's always good to have a seat that's molded to you, and it's expensive. It's not cheap, but it will definitely keep you safe and allow you to focus on your driving.
How much are NASCAR drivers dependent on their pit crew? Because yeah, obviously when you go and you get your tires changed, your fuel topped up, this and the other. But how much are drivers heavily dependent on the pit crew understanding what the driver needs in that moment during the race? Because anything can happen, and before you know it, if one thing goes wrong, it changes the outcome of the driver's race.
Yeah. So when your pit crew is out there, right, you are communicating with your spotter on a radio in your helmet. You're also speaking with your crew chief as well. So the information that you're providing your crew chief and your spotter, letting them know how the car is. From there, the crew chief is going to figure out, okay, he's saying that the car is feeling this way at these particular times. So the crew chief figures out, okay, here's the adjustments that we can make to the car so that it can be better for him. So then when I come in for a pit stop, the crew chief has already told the pit crew through the radios, hey, this is exactly what the adjustments need to be. Go make these adjustments. And then from there, when I get back on track, I'll feel it and I'll say, okay, hey, this is great. We went in the right direction, or, oh, wait, we didn't go in the right direction. Or whatever you did is wrong. We need to change it the next time around so that we can do better. So the pit crew is not in the dark. We as drivers give our crew chief information. The crew chief from there tells the pit crew exactly what to do to modify the car and adjust all the parameters so that we can be quicker. And then the pit crew does it when we pull in, and then when we get back on track, hopefully everything that we wanted actually happens.
I fear that I may have taken this conversation a bit off track, no pun intended. I wanted to ask, if someone was interested in getting into racing in general, or just racing, what can people do to get started? Because I remember you saying somewhere else that there's not only simulators, but there's also video games like with F1, Oh,
Gran Turismo,
thank
Forza.
you.
Yeah. There's a lot
Yeah.
of different ways people can get into race. So I would say sim racing is the first and foremost way. If you're really serious about getting into real racing, I highly suggest sim racing for everybody. That is where you're going to get the most realistic feel without actually being out there in real life. It's a great place to go make mistakes and learn things. Go try something. Can I go through this corner at 100 miles per hour? Yes or no? Go try it on the sim. Okay, it worked. Or okay, that didn't work. Let me try something different. And keep training and training and training, train on different tracks, train in different cars, and keep learning just the general like just keep learning how to race against people on the sim. Keep learning how to manipulate the car, in the middle of a corner, on the exit of the corner, entry, center of the corner, wherever. Keep on like trying to figure out what. Okay, if I give this input to the race car, what does it give me back? And when you do it over and over and over and over on the sim, because you're on the sim, a few hours a night, that is what's going to mentally train yourself, and it's going to give you that muscle memory where if I get in a car and I give any car this kind of input, or this particular car this kind of input, or this particular setup on a car this kind of input, this is what's going to happen. And then you go through so many different bad scenarios as well on the sim. Every time you spin out, you crash, or you lose grip, or whatever it is, you learn from that and you understand. Okay, every time this happens, I know what to do to counter that so that I can keep myself from hitting the wall. And you do it over and over and over and over on the sim. If you try that in real life, I mean, back in the day, people would just go train in real life, but it costs a lot of money to do that. Nobody has, unlimited money to say, hey, I'm going to go rent a track for, a whole month and go there and train there 12 hours a day, every single day, and have unlimited tires. Like, we don't have that kind of money to do that. So training on the sim, you have unlimited tires, unlimited everything. And as long as you got electricity and internet and a computer that will stay on, you can train as long as you want every single day. So I highly suggest sim racing to start. And then, even to get into you do it at some point, you have to translate that virtual to reality. So at some point, go get in a go-kart, go get in a dirt car, maybe a lower level dirt car, go get into, a very lower level vehicle, like car, like a Miata or something like that, or, something to where you can get some type of real life experience on track so you can get the fear factor of like, hey, this is real life. Like real mistakes have real consequences. So you get to learn that. So you translate the virtual to reality. You get into lower level stuff. You keep working it. You keep your costs down as much as you can. And then at some point, when you're finally ready, start figuring out what you got to do to take it to the next level. Get more funding and step up to the next ranks. And that's kind of how you do it. That's basically what I did in a nutshell.
I just want to ask this really quickly. You said about learning how to manipulate your car. How would you manipulate a car on the racetrack? I've never heard that before.
So how you manipulate a car in a racetrack. So when you go into a corner, right, and every corner is different, right? So every corner requires different inputs, right? So when you go in, when you're driving straight, the car is driving straight. You're not really doing much but holding the throttle down. When you go into a corner, you obviously got to turn into the corner, right? So let's say I'm going into the left hander, so I'm turning in. So right, this input manipulates what the car is doing. The car goes from straight to now turning. But then let's say as I'm turning in, the car isn't turning as well. Maybe it's still wanting to go straight. I'm getting a little bit of understeer. It's wanting to push up the track. Well, now I need to change some inputs and do something else to manipulate the car so that it can continue to turn and do what I want it to do. So maybe I got to drag the brake a little bit so I can get more front end grip, or maybe I get off the throttle a little bit more so I can get the weight of the car to go from the rear to the front, so the front can grip a little bit more and it can keep turning. So that's what I'm talking about. Manipulate the car. You have multiple tools to use between your throttle, brake, steering wheel, and depending on other things. Let's say rally racing, you got an e-brake and some other things. But at least in stock car racing, you got your gas, brake, and steering wheel. These are what you use to manipulate the car. Lifting off the throttle pulls weight forward. You just manipulated the weight. Getting back on the throttle pushes the weight back. Um, Turning in and getting off the throttle throws all the weight onto the right front. Turning in but staying on the throttle keeps the weight a little bit more on the right rear so that you might push a little bit. So there's different things. Whatever you want the outcome to be, you got to throw the right inputs at the car to get that. So that's when I say manipulate the car. Maybe even in the middle of the corner, you're having to use a little bit of brake to like just kind of quick little stabs of the brake to get the front end to like, little weight to transfer forward so you can keep turning. Maybe you're chopping at the wheel a little bit to get the tires to do what you need so the car can keep turning. There's all these little things you can do to help the car do what you want it to do. So that's what I say. That's what I'm talking about when I say manipulate the car.
I understand now. So it's use what you can in the moment to get.
To get the outcome that you need. Because sometimes your initial you give an input because you want a particular outcome, but sometimes the input you gave is not enough to get that outcome. And now, what do you need to do to manipulate the car so that you get the outcome that you want?
Now that makes sense. You started your own motorsport company called Jesse Iwuji Motorsport. I've
Yes.
got two questions in one here. The first is, what's it like to be an owner within, like a motorsport owner within the same industry that you race in? Because you've also, and this is part of the second question, you've also come back into racing as with Chevrolet or Chevrolet.
Chevrolet, yeah.
Yeah, as a sponsor. What's the difference that you noticed between being a racer and being a sport or being a company owner within the same industry? Because from the outside perspective, it would, well, it's different. It would be very different, but then I wouldn't know the nuances behind it.
Yeah, so being a team owner and also a driver too at the same time, wearing both of those hats, you get to see all the sides of it. You see what it costs to race. You see what it on the driver's side, you're trying to do the best that you can. But when you do have the owner hat on too, especially as a driver, you're always thinking, okay, if I do this and if I try to gain this position, what can happen? Okay, I think I'm pretty clear. I could probably try to gain that position and nothing's going to happen. Or hey, this is a big risk to try to get that one position. Is the risk I'm about to take, if I, for whatever reason, get caught up in a wreck because of it, is it worth it financially in the end? Most drivers who aren't obviously team owners, they don't ever think about that because, like, whatever, go take whatever position you can. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Well, at the end of the day, like, someone has to pay for it, you know? So then you always think, and so, like, I think having the team owner hat on and the driver hat, you start thinking about the financial side of things. You start thinking of what's worth it, what's not, because you have the bigger picture of mind, right? Like if you're only focused on that one moment, then you potentially could be doing something that could limit or negatively affect the big picture overall for the year. So you always got to be smart. And I think having the team owner hat on definitely helps you be smarter on decisions that you make on the track as a driver.
I suppose, because then you've got the perspective, like you said, with the finances and how it's going to impact your reputation, then you can think, maybe not do this or maybe do that to help with the PR. You never know.
Yeah, exactly.
Jesse Iwuji, everyone. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about you? And what are some of the upcoming races people can expect to see you in?
Yeah, they can find me all over social media. I'm on all of the social media platforms. So they just look up my name, Jesse Iwuji. That's Jesse. Last name is Iwuji. Look me up on all social media platforms. Follow me, subscribe, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm on everything. And I post all the time. I'm always pushing out either funny stuff, fun stuff, inspiring stuff, or just cool stuff in general. So, yeah, find me on social media. Reach out if anyone has any questions.
Oh, and check out this drag racing or drift racing content.
Yeah, I got drift stuff, I got drag racing stuff, I got road course stuff, I got other stuff. Yeah, I'm all over the place.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this episode with Jesse Iwuji, then don't forget to check out this episode with James Gray.